Star Wars. When you hear that name, many things come to mind. From the space opera that started it all to the legendary score that anyone can remember off the top of their head, there is no shortage of iconic elements that the series has come to be known for, expanding from film franchise to a multimedia-based one, with Star Wars branded toys, merchandise, TV shows and more. As time went on, they introduced the franchise to video games with mixed reactions. Some were great, others were subpar, and many were just plain terrible. While the majority of the games were fun to play and classics in their own right, none held a candle to the movies that started it all, save a few. This is the story of one of those few. It all dates back to 1999, shortly after the release of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Longtime fans of the movies had critically panned the movie for its story, overblown use of CGI, and terrible comic relief. The reboot of the entire franchise was a critical dud, in more ways than one, and George Lucas, alongside his gaming studio, LucasArts, needed to find a way to make up for the losses they endured. And so LucasArts started looking for the next hit developer to work with. Many developers knocked on LucasArts' door, from Pandemic Studios to Raven Software. One stood out from the rest, a recently renowned studio named BioWare. Coming off their smash hit take on the Dungeons & Dragons franchise, Baldur's Gate, BioWare was a hot commodity in the industry at the time, as they were able to turn once failing franchises into massively successful and influential video games. But even they hadn't had the chance to adapt the franchise they were itching to work with, Star Wars. Luckily enough, LucasArts had seen their work on Baldur's Gate and felt that they were the right company for the job at hand. BioWare's CEO, Greg Zuschuk, and LucasArts producer Michael Gallo quickly went into talks about what kind of game it would be, and ended up giving BioWare two choices. They could either take the easy route and try adapting the next Star Wars film, Attack of the Clones, or go with something that would be difficult to create but involve the creative freedom they so desired. That second choice was a story taking place 4,000 years before the events of Episode 1, in a galaxy where there are hundreds of thousands of Sith and Jedi fighting each other in a galactic war. They would be given no restraints with this project, within reason. No one had ever covered this time period before, so the worlds and characters they created could be wholly original, a precursor to the modern films. Anyone who wouldn't take this offer would be a madman, so BioWare, of course, took it in earnest, and LucasArts made good on its promise of creative freedom, as little to nothing was thrown out by the publisher. Whenever they sent their work over to Skywalker Ranch, only minute details were changed, and they were usually praised for the work they had done. The only time they were ever told to add something in was when LucasArts suggested they put the game on the newly announced Xbox, a challenge that these PC-minded developers were more than up to, after they had already tackled the subject with MDK2. A system with architecture that they were already accustomed to, and a platform in dire need of hit titles. It was a win-win for BioWare, LucasArts, and Microsoft in general. As with all BioWare projects, they wanted to not only improve on what they were known for, but also exceed everyone's expectations. They wanted to do something that no one studio had truly created yet. A living, breathing galaxy filled to the brim with compelling characters, rich and exciting worlds, and stellar narratives. This was their goal. This was their dream. They just needed to find the right people suited to the roles they needed. One of the first people they brought on would be the director, Casey Hudson, who'd been working at the company for some time, with his major credits being a level designer for MDK2. Seeing something in him, he rose through the ranks of BioWare faster than anyone had before, lending his hidden creative thought processes to the project. For the lead programmers, Mark Brockington and David Faulkner were brought on, tasked with helping to bring this absolutely massive world to life, and on the Xbox no less. But what's a world without its characters? And Star Wars wasn't lacking in that department. Led by David Hibble and Derek Watts, the art department was charged with bringing over 60 species across the Star Wars universe to life, alongside the planets many of them called home. That was the primary job of concept artist John Samuel Gallagher and his team. As they pulled from the pages of the extended universe of novels and the movies alike, they began to take many interesting worlds from these stories and showed them in a new light. From the Wookiee home world of Kashyyyk to the den of Sith Korriban, each was given a great amount of detail by the environmental and 3D design team, enough so that they would be fun to play in, yet not too overbearing on the Xbox's weaker processing power. However, contending with the system's strength wouldn't even be the half of it. Hundreds of hours worth of scripting and voice acting was needed to make this world a reality. But what's a Star Wars game without its story? And BioWare's was proving to be more ambitious than anything that had come before it. Drew Karpyshyn, the game's head writer, wanted to craft a story that was galactic in scale, one that had a clear villain and hero, yet had a certain morally grey tone to it. The player could be a villainous Sith or heroic Jedi. It was all up to the player in his opinion. A plethora of choices were needed to make this vision a reality, so he and his own team wrote and wrote for years, coming up with over 15,000 lines of dialogue, spoken by over 300 individual characters, a feat that just hadn't been tackled in the industry before. BioWare was known for breaking boundaries, but this was revolutionary for video game storytelling. And it wasn't all in English either, as many of the races spoke their own languages, making the task all the more difficult. Still, they persisted, and they soon passed their work over to the sound department, who'd been given the monumental task of taking all of the text and turning it into an actual narrative. Under the stewardship of Julian Kawaneski, the lead sound designer, BioWare would bring in over 70 experienced voice actors to provide each race with a distinct accent, and give each of the main characters unique and interesting personalities. Still, they didn't have enough actors to play each part. To rectify this, they had them act as multiple characters at a time, spreading them throughout the galaxy so the average player would never notice. Actors such as Catherine Tabor, Tom Kane, Jennifer Hale, and more played this careful balancing act, trying to make each of their characters their own. These characters would be the foundation of BioWare's new world, a living, breathing world with many different people from all walks of life, whether they be light or dark. While the voice actors certainly had a lot on their hands, that was nothing compared to what Jeremy Soule, the game's composer, had to go through. Living up to John Williams' iconic score was a tough call. It had to be perfect and nail that classic Star Wars feel all the way through, yet still be original and memorable in its own right. Having worked previously on The Elder Scrolls, Morrowind, and BioWare's own Neverwinter Nights, he was more than up to the task, giving the game the classic soundtrack that it is known for today. Classic yet original, those were the feelings that BioWare were trying to capture when they were creating the ultimate Star Wars experience. Their only hope was that it would exceed beyond their expectations. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, releasing on July 15th, 2003, was everything that a Star Wars fan could hope for. The ability to play as Jedi or Sith, the worlds that they only had encountered in the pages of books, and the characters that were as detailed and remarkable as the ones that existed in the films were all here and more. After using the extensive character creator to create a protagonist to your own liking, you are quickly thrust into the world of Knights of the Old Republic, a world ravaged by a war between the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire. Waking up on board the ship Endar Spire, under attack by the Empire, you fight your way through the ship only to be forced to flee with fellow Republic soldier Carth Onasi. Crash landing on the Sith-occupied planet Taris, the two hatch a plan to save Bastila Shan, their leader, and to escape to the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine. As the journey continues, their merry band of misfit continues to grow, from Mission Veo to the murderous HK-47, with you slowly becoming a Jedi, learning of your mysterious past, and challenging the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Malak. Along the way you have to make various choices, akin to Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, but with the signature Star Wars flair. These choices can either be just minor ones like deciding where to go, to major impactful choices that reverberate throughout the game. If you act in an evil or heroic way, you gain light side or dark side points which contribute to who your character will become. Heading down the path of the dark side may disgust the majority of your members, while others may relish in your villainy. The fate of the galaxy is in your hands, and whether you conquer or save it is all up to you. But, as with any BioWare game, story and gameplay go hand in hand, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic was no exception. There were your variants of classes, both new and old, that felt right at home in the Star Wars universe with unique stats to go along with them. Even the light side and dark side became intertwined with the gameplay, as force powers specific to each side would be attainable after some time. However, for the battle system, Knights of the Old Republic still held to the D20 rule set implemented into the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons that started the company on its winning streak, albeit with lightsabers and blasters as the characters' weapons of choice. On the surface, combat seems to work in real time, with fluid lightsaber duels being a major part of the experience. In actuality though, battles are round-based. Time is divided into these rounds, and then the combatants attack and react to each other simultaneously, giving the illusion of real-time combat. The number of actions you can perform each round is directly related to this. As with any other traditional turn-based RPG, your party was crucial to combat. Thankfully, you could take command of them on the fly, allowing you to experiment with different combat techniques and understand their own quirks. Sometimes, you wouldn't even have to fight. If you were on the light side, You could persuade your way out of a fight, while embracing the dark side could result in you having the ability to force choke an opponent before they even attacked. Knights of the Old Republic seemed like the perfect Star Wars game on the surface. Fantastic lightsaber combat, otherworldly characters, and fantastical planets with wildlife and locals to match. However, its inner workings felt distinctly like a BioWare title, a company that arrived in the gaming industry out of nowhere, after making hit after hit, found the pinnacle of its creation in Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic. Selling nearly 3 million copies across the Xbox and PC, their first entry into the Star Wars mythos wasn't just the hit Microsoft had wanted, but a phenomenon in the making. While the movies were falling apart at the seams, the video games had just reached their peak, and BioWare had created that tipping point. A harbinger of things to come, BioWare was not only leading Star Wars itself into a new and untrodden territory, but the genre as a whole towards something greater. The American RPG for years had honed in on the gameplay aspect while leaving the story department a bit lacking. A few outliers had existed for sure, but they were never the majority, never the norm. With its innovative dialogue and morality systems alongside its stellar storyline and captivating gameplay, Knights of the Old Republic changed the very nature of the genre for years to come, launching its developers into stardom and its tale into the annals of history. And to think, none of this would have happened without one simple choice.
Well, hello there, dear viewer, and thank you for watching yet another episode of Chronicles. If you're interested in seeing more of this kind of content, then please consider subscribing, liking this video, sharing with your friends, and overall trying to help us get bigger as we move into this new phase of Chronicles. And today was Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic. An interesting game, very different from what we've been talking about recently. An American game instead of a Japanese game for once. I have been sitting on this one for a long time, and I could have waited for it, especially with new Fire Emblem coming out, and I have Fire Emblem content in the wings. But I had this ready to go today, and I just had to share with you guys the story behind this game. I was mostly inspired to do this because we originally had a plan of everyone gets to pick their favorite game and write a script about it, and we were gonna do an episode about it when I had a bunch of people helping me. Now I only have Jameson helping me, and I believe this was Jameson's script, the script that he chose. So that is the main reason why this is on here. And I also love Star Wars. I love Star Wars to death. It's my favorite movie series of all time, if I had to say. And I am just so glad that I was finally able to use the Star Wars theme in this episode. But the thanks for this episode should go to me, because the hard work and determination of this episode should go to our talented editor, Jameson, who you can find linked on Twitter down below, and also Bredden Stripes of Video Game Storytime. Yes, Video Game Storytime is a new and intriguing channel that no one is watching. Less people than us are watching, and it's really sad in my opinion, because I feel that they're doing a little bit of a better job than I am at times. And they do the same kind of thing. They talk about video game history, but instead of focusing on a game or a game series, they focus exclusively on one person at a time. They focus on a creator or a producer or something. Some creative individual involved with a video game. They focus on them, and the results are pretty fascinating. So I really recommend that you go check them out in the description, in the cards, and end slate, and support them also on their Patreon, because they're having financial troubles right now, and they really need the support of people, because we need to stick together. We need to work together in these trying times of YouTube to help content creators like us, the small timers, grow. But what did you think of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic? Think about getting the game. I believe it's on Steam. It's pretty cheap if you ever want to play it. Have you played the game before? Is it one of your favorite games of all time? Or are you just not interested in it? Do you like Star Wars? All these things. Let's have a conversation about Star Wars and all that in the comments down below. But anyway, that's it from me. Be sure to keep up with us as we continue on. Check out our SoundCloud for episodes earlier than you'd be getting them here right now. You could catch our next episode, which we'll get a little preview of at the end of this episode, which is going to be our new thing. Go to SoundCloud for that. If you want episodes like the second we make them, you can also support us on Patreon, where you can get a bunch of cool perks and help us towards the goal of going full-time with Chronicles. Anyway, I hope you continue that thirst for knowledge, dear viewer.
昔々、ドーマとミラの2人の神様が長い間争っていました。
ねえ、どうしてドーマとミラ様は仲良くできなかったのかしら。
僕たちはずっと仲良しでいようね。
ごめんなさいって謝ったら許してね。